Thank you, madam, and don't delete it for today. Okay, so we had seen in the last class different types of transpiration. Stomatal transpiration being one of the like largest in terms of amount of transpiration, and then the two small ones, that is cuticular and lenticular. Cuticle was that waxy layer on the leaf surface, and lenticel was the structure on the stem, which we had seen in the pictures, which is like allowing the transpiration to happen, as well as the gaseous section. Now that way we are done with the what is transpiration, what are the different types and different ways to measure, as well as the experimentation to prove the transpiration. Now we are coming towards the last part of the chapter, that is factors affecting transpiration. So there are two main types of factor. One is external and the other one is internal. In terms of external, everything that is present in the surrounding in terms of sunlight intensity, temperature, velocity of the wind, humidity, the amount of carbon dioxide and the atmospheric pressure. These are all the external factors. And the internal one is the water content of the leaves. So we'll quickly see one by one of these. So intensity of sunlight, how does it affect? Now it's again a very commonly understood like thing, right? More transpiration occurs during the day, and the reason being intensity of sunlight is higher during that time when the stomatas are open, and it is closed during the night because the sunlight is less, and this is specifically to facilitate the inward diffusion of carbon dioxide. So during the day photosynthesis has to happen, so for that carbon dioxide is required, so for that stomata has to be open, so ultimately transpiration can happen as well. So that is the correlation with the intensity of the sunlight and the transpiration which happens. Now, when the surrounding is cloudy, when the sunlight is there but not completely there, it's kind of situation between day and night, right? It's kind of gloomy environment. So that's the time when the stomata, they are partially closed and the transpiration amount is reduced as well. So at night it is minimal, during the bright sunny day it is maximum, and during the cloudy day it is kind of average. So that way intensity of sunlight affects the process of transpiration. Second, temperature. Again, a very simpler fact. The main purpose of the transpiration to happen, or rather one of the purpose of transpiration to happen, was cooling effect on the plant. So higher the temperature, transpiration will also be higher, so that more evaporation of the water can happen through the leaf structure, so that the more cooling down for the leaf and the plant can happen. So higher temperature, higher transpiration. Simpler logic there. Velocity of the wind, which is the third point. In this case, the transpiration increases with the velocity of the wind, right? It's not, the statement here is wrong. Transpiration does not increase the velocity of the wind because there is no such correlation. But transpiration increases with the velocity of the wind. That means if the velocity of the wind is higher, that's when the air will blow faster. So whatever moisture is accumulated, evaporated water is accumulated closer to the plant due to the process of transpiration, that will be carried away, so that the pressure difference between inside the leaf and outside the leaf will be maintained, and more transpiration can happen. If the wind does not blow much, it's rather more stationary, then in that case the leaf surrounding the leaf, there will be more and more moisture, so the pressure difference may not be that great, right? And that is when the transpiration rate will reduce. So more the velocity of the wind, or if the wind blows faster, higher the transpiration. If the wind blows slower, lesser the transpiration. Fourth factor which affect transpiration is humidity. Now again, the same reason, if the humidity in the environment is higher, obviously the pressure difference inside the leaf and outside the leaf will not be much, and that is when the transpiration rate will be reduced. But if the humidity in the environment is less, then the humidity or the moisture content inside the leaf is always higher due to the water absorption, and that will establish a very good or higher concentration gradient of the water, and water can move out in the transpiration format, that is evaporated water vapor. So that's when if the humidity is higher, transpiration is less, humidity is lower, transpiration is more as well. And carbon dioxide, that is the fifth point. Increase in carbon dioxide level outside the air over like above the normal percentage will cause the stomatal closure, and it will decrease the transpiration. Now this is again to do with the exchange of gases between inside the leaf structure and outside, that is in the environment. So usually what happens is whenever there is increase in carbon dioxide level outside the layer, the concentration gradient of the carbon dioxide is more. So more carbon dioxide will try to push itself inside the leaf structure, and that is just because of the pressure difference or the what we say concentration difference of the carbon dioxide, and that way the transpiration will again be less. So that is fifth one. And the last one, that is the atmospheric pressure. Again, a simpler logical point. Higher the pressure outside the leaf, the transpiration will be slower. And if the atmospheric pressure is lower, then the transpiration rate is higher. So these are all the external factors which affect the process of transpiration. And then the internal one, which is the water content of the leaves. Now this we have already studied enough. Like we already know, if the water content of the leaves reduces, that either because of the insufficient absorption of the water by the roots or so on, the leaves they will wilt, and because of this wilting of the leaves, the stomata they will always remain in flow state. So that means transpiration is reduced, and this is directly related to the closure of stomata. So, but that is like not the direct effect in terms of water content on the transpiration, rather it is through the stomata. So that is why this statement, this reduction in transpiration is indirectly due to the closure of stomata, right? So water content is less, so stomata, they will guard cells will be flaccid, stomata will be closed, and that's why the transpiration will be less. So that is again a natural mechanism of water conservation within plants. So whenever there is, you see a plant which is wilted, or the leaves are wilted, not the plant. Whenever the leaves are wilted of a particular plant, that is a natural mechanism for the water conservation by the plant. So these are the various factors. Does anyone have any question? Again, I'm kind of rushing through because there is not much to discuss, and these are more logical points. I hope they are easy to understand as well. Any question, anyone? Okay, so then there are few structural adaptations in the plant which leads to reduction in the transpiration process. So what does this means is, plants they are supposed to conserve the water whichever they are going to need, either to create suction force or to create cooling effect, or even to create the transportation mechanism, that is upward or downward flow of the water, either for nutrients or for the food. So, and that is one of the major like function of this transpiration process. And we know that this process gets affected by several factors surrounding the environment, majorly the external factors. Now, how does a plant get rid of these problems created by the external factors? So that is what we are going to see here as the adaptations in the plant to reduce excessive transpiration. So the first adaptation that occurs in the plant is sunken stomata. So Sunken stomata, this is a specific type of stomata where the stomata may be either sunken, that means they are kind of like reduced in their size, or they are covered by a hair-like projection. So for example, this is the what we say, the leaf section or cross section of a leaf of a nerium plant, right? Nerium is one type of plant, and that leaf has this specific arrangement of the hair-like projection in the substomatal region. You can see it where my cursor is. That's where this, in the substomatal space, there are hair-like projection which will not allow lot of transpiration to happen, and that is like acting as a physical barrier for those water vapor to go out of the stomatal structure. So that is what is the sunken stomata like structure. That is one adaptation to reduce the transpiration. Then fewer number of stomata. Again, the leaf itself may not allow the development of more number of stomata, and during the like growth of the leaf itself, less number of stomata will be allocated on the leaf surface. So ultimately the transpiration will also be less. Narrowing of the leaves, again narrowing of the leaves will reduce the surface area of the leaf. So less surface area, less number of stomata, so less transpiration. Very simpler logic there. Reduced exposed surfaces. Now this is another way that plant can reduce the transpiration. For example, the leaves, you might have seen some of the leaves, they get rolled up, like they coil around themselves or they fold themselves in such a way that the transpiration surface area on which the direct sunlight can fall, and it can increase the transpiration process. That surface area is reduced, which we can call it as an exposed surface area, and because of that the transpiration will be less. Again, this is very specific to fewer plants, not generally that it happens. Loss of leaves, again in you might like be aware of the deciduous plant, right? They will drop off all their leaves so that they can preserve more and more water to avoid the transpiration, or excessive transpiration can be avoided. And in case of cactus family, these leaves, they can also get converted into the spines, so that then in that case also the transpiration is reduced, because spines may not have those many number of stomata like which are present in the leaf structure. So that is again one either modification of the leaves or loss of leaves, which is one of the adaptation in the plant. Thicker cuticle, again banyan tree or most of the fig trees, right? They have a very thick cuticle, and this I had explained, like a waxy layer present on the surface, which kind of avoids the transpiration process or the water evaporation from the leaf, and that way it is reducing the excessive transpiration. So these are all the adaptation. Again, does anyone have any question here? I hope you people are following. Sleepyhead. Okay, so then the significance of transpiration, again this we have already seen, but just to briefly outline it here. Cooling effect, we know how does the transpiration help in cooling effect. By evaporation, it will reduce the surface temperature by allowing the moisture to be present in area close to the leaf surface. That way it will cool down. Suction force, like the roots are continuously absorbing water, so they are pushing the water upward. Transpiration is removing the water from the leaf surface, so it is kind of creating a void which is acting as a suction force to pull the water upward. So that is the suction force. And then third one is distribution of water and mineral salts. Again, due to the transpiration, the water movement is happening from the root to the leaf structure, right? One of the factor is suction force, and due to that water is moving. So along with that water, the mineral or nutrients, they are also being transported across the different areas of the plant. So this
So
is
just
what is,
I
yeah.
wanted to ask something. Did you get the specimen paper from the council?
We are not talking about it, Aditya, right now.
Okay, fine.
And you shouldn't be asking this question in the middle. I'm sorry to say that way.
Fine, fine. No issues.
We can talk about this at the end of the class.
Yeah, okay, no issues.
So, I forgot what I was saying. Okay.
Distribution of water and mineral salts.
Yeah. So, that way, these are the three main uses or the significance of the transpiration process in the plant. Uh, Again, there are same points being explained in different ways. You can just read it out on your own. I don't think this will be difficult because we have discussed this turbidity, flaccidity, suction force, transpiration pool, and so on quite often. So this is what is mentioned on this slide. So that way you can just read it out on your own and you should be able to get it. If not, you can come back to me. We can discuss this later. Now, one of the last topic, rather the second last topic of this is the how does the transpiration affects the climate, right? Especially when we talk of the forest or wherever there are more plants or less plant, this transpiration process will also happen depending on the number of plants present in that particular area. And also it depends on how much water is consumed by that particular plant. So, for example, a fully grown single sunflower plant is estimated to lose about half a liter of water per day. Similarly, single maize plant loses 2 liters of water per day by the process of transpiration, and large apple trees, which is like which will lose almost 30 liters of the water per day. So these amounts, they are directly dependent on the surface area of the leaves that is being available for the process of transpiration. And if you can imagine, if that much amount of the water is getting lost in the process of transpiration, obviously the moisture content in the environment or in the surrounding atmosphere will be higher, which will ultimately help in building the clouds, and that way it will bring the rainfall. Again, it's a very simpler logic. Though it is taking out the water from the soil, but obviously it is adding it back as well. It is not letting it go off waste. So that is how the transpiration does affect the climate and the processes related to it, especially the raining part.
So another question
Yes.
related to this. So that basically, do transpiration and photosynthesis happen simultaneously, or can they not happen simultaneously?
They do happen simultaneously. See, transpiration is merely a conduction of water mechanism, right? And photosynthesis is more of a physiological or metabolic process or a chemical reaction, we can say, right? Biochemical reaction. So these two processes can happen simultaneously.
Also, don't plants need like isn't the leaf like involved in the in photosynthesis? So how can it also do transpiration? Like,
Because the structures which are involved in photosynthesis and transpiration, they are totally different, right? For photosynthesis, what you need is chloroplast. For transpiration, what you need is your stomata, that is only on the epidermal layer, or at the max, the spongy mesophyll cells, which are causing the evaporation from that thin film like layer, right? So the structures which are involved, they are drastically different. And plus, like I said, because transpiration is just merely a conduction of water from one place to other place, and then it goes out by process of evaporation. While photosynthesis is like within the cell, a small organelle called chloroplast. Within chloroplast, photosynthesis is happening, right? So again, because the processes are different, structures are different, they can happen simultaneously. Okay, so I hope that was clear. So next and the last part of this chapter is the guttation and bleeding. I assume we had discussed about the guttation also in the last class. So these are the two processes in which the water is moved out of the plant structures in the liquid form. Transpiration, it goes out as water vapor. In guttation and bleeding, it goes out in the liquid form and not as a water vapor. So the diagram that you see on the top right corner of this slide, you can see at the margin of the leaves, there are these droplets being formed. That particular type of water being moving out of the leaf structure is called as guttation. So this specifically happens when there is excess of water being absorbed by the root. So the more and more water is accumulated within the plant, and when the transpiration is less, or when the transpiration factors, they are kind of suppressing the transpiration process, and but the roots are continuously absorbing, so that way it will build a lot of hydrostatic pressure within the plant, and because of that the water will be forced out to move from the tip of the veins of the leaf. And we had also seen the name of this structure, these special pore bearing structures, these are called as hydathode. So at the end of the leaf we have veins, and those veins opening at the end or the at the margin of the leaves, they are specially called as hydathodes. And this process of guttation is also called as exudation, that is exit of something, that is what is exudation. So exudation or guttation is the movement of water outside the leaf in the form of liquid droplets through the hydathode structure, and that is happening because of the when there is excess of water being absorbed by the root and the transpiration rate is very low because of whatsoever reason, either due to humidity or due to the temperature being low and all those factors like which we had seen. So because of that the water will move out through hydathode, and this is commonly seen in plants like banana or strawberries. If you ever get to see these plants, do observe especially during the morning time when the sun has just started rising up. That is when you see this. During the daytime it is difficult to see because the transpiration is also maximum at that time. So that is guttation. And bleeding is like bleeding always happens to a plant, which is like when you injure a plant, or let's say when you make a cut on a plant stem, that is when the something liquid, some liquid oozes out of that stem, and that is what is bleeding. And it is majorly the cell sap content, and the maximum content of the cell sap is obviously water. So that way bleeding is also one type of like mechanism where the water can come out of the plant in the liquid form. So that is bleeding. So with this we are done with whole of this chapter. And like just to add a little bit of information to whatever we had seen, so this diagram is specifically called as path of ascent of sap. We know what sap is, we know what meaning, what is the meaning of this word ascent. Ascent means upward, and path, so path of upward movement of the cell sap. So that is what this diagram is. It looks very complicated, but it's very simple at the same time. So if you look here, thank you. So if you look here, there is root here, and then they have shown a parts of the structure, like this is the stem and this is the leaf. So root, stem, leaf. So water will be absorbed from the soil into the root, then it moves upward through the stem. That is what goes out in the lenticular transpiration, if at all lenticels are present, and the osmosis also happens, and because of that the water will keep moving from cell to cell. If whenever it comes upward from mid-rib or mid-vein of the leaf, it will get distributed into different cells. From those cells, the water will move out through the stomatal transpiration. Some water will go out from this cuticular transpiration. So that is what is being shown here. So this is the upward movement of water along with the minerals and salt. That is what is known as the path of ascent of sap. This is not literally a part of the syllabus, but the every aspect of this ascent of sap or the path of the ascent of sap is part of the syllabus. So ultimately, I don't know if they at all ask a question based on whole of diagram, that will still be valid even if they have removed this topic from the syllabus. And the last one, this is surely not the part of the syllabus. I'm not going to discuss it, but if at all you want to read about how does the movement of water happens in the plant, that is what is known as potassium ion concentration theory. Here it is relatively simpler. You can read it on your own. Again, like I mentioned, this is not the part of the syllabus. So let me just write here as extra so that you don't read it up. Yeah. Okay. So that's it from my side. Yes. Now, if you have any questions, and if not, then I will take Aditya's question. Anyone has any question? Okay. So then let me see. I haven't. So Aditya, I hope you are listening, and I haven't checked. I haven't checked the papers yet, whatever are given to you, but maybe we can quickly have a look at them. So here they are, biology. Yeah. So this is the paper that they have given. I will post this today in the Google Classroom so that you can have a look at it. Maybe right after the class I'll do that. So just go through this paper, try to solve it. And I feel this is relatively very simpler paper. And the major thing that you need to look at is the number of marks being assigned to these questions, right? I guess somewhere they must have 2 marks per question. If not, I might be totally wrong. But they were
So just
supposed to.
one more question
Yes.
regarding this. Like अगर ये स्पेसिमेन पेपर है तो
Hmm.
मोर और लेस इसी डिफिकल्टी का पेपर आएगा ना, ऐसा तो नहीं कि इफ दे शोइंग दिस माय टास्क समथिंग एंड
Yes, it is like that mostly, but again, so what if you notice it clearly, they have divided it into sections, like how your earlier paper was as well, right? And the difficulty is increasing section by section, right? So section 2 is again of 15 marks, and you can see the complication in terms of the options it has increased. And surely the last section, where is it, this is going to be a little tougher one. So 15, 15, 10, that is the distribution which is given here.
right, okay.
Yeah, so that way you can like maybe just have a look at this paper, you will have more clarity. And I am also going to use the similar pattern. I had already thought of creating sections based on the difficulty level, so that way I'm
So
not done.
will you also give a paper of this difficulty?
uh, I have not gone through this paper, so I'm not too sure of the difficulty level, but I always keep the paper like 30% of the marks, they will be very easy, everyone should be able to solve. Then 40% of it is kind of medium difficulty level, and the remaining 30% is of a little higher difficulty level. That's how I distribute my paper, whether MCQ or whether subjective type of answers. So that is how I had done it always so far. So I'll be doing the same